Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. Very important topic, resilient leadership, and Pooja will be taking us through this. Before we start and I hand it over to Pooja, I'd like to give a small introduction on Mirak. So Mirak actually literally means essence of ourselves. So we are a bunch of people who are putting our heart and soul into working with the organizations and providing learning and development solutions for them. There are a bunch of offerings that we work with. Learning on training interventions, the way we call it. So LDPs, MDPs, behavior interventions, coaching, one-to-one leadership coaching, group coaching, team coaching. We also do certifications, so training people to be coaches, manager as a coach or first-time managers, right? And to all this, we have a support of assessments to ensure we do see the needle movement once the participants come in. We have 17,000 hours of coaching. We have a global network of coaches because we are #1 coaching training company in India. Almost 150 plus businesses who have collaborated with us, and we are working with them as we speak, and almost 9,000 plus employees trained. So we are having a humongous journey with the organizations. Yeah, I'm glad to introduce all of you to this organization. Our USP is our platform. So we have a proprietary platform. All our training and learning interventions are delivered through the platform, be it coaching, be it training. So the sessions are available for you to actually access later. The assessments, the feedback, everything happens on the platform. So it helps us deliver at scale. So the numbers that you're seeing have been possible because of our tech and the technology platform that we have. With this introduction, I want to move on to today's topic. I welcome Pooja. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for being here and agreeing to take us through this topic. Very important. Pooja is the president of Human Resources at CRISIL Limited. She has almost 2 decades of experience in HR and in financial services and IT and ITeS. She's business focused. She's strategic. She's result driven. And she's worked across various facets of HR, involving organization transformation, creation of inclusive culture, and building the best-in-class teams. This is one of the few organizations she's worked with. She's also been associated with WNX and led the HR for banking, financial services, insurance, healthcare. Oh my God. Okay, the list is very long. I'm really delighted that you are here to talk with your experience. I see there is a lot of functions that you have covered with. She's also worked with Standard Chartered as a HR business leader, overseeing, among other things, the talent acquisition, and talent management and performance management. She's an MBA and a member of CIPD and a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach. So yeah, anything related to coaching, coach, or that space, she is there to answer it for you, apart from just the resilient leadership, if you have some such queries. She's actively involved in social work related to education and underprivileged children. Welcome to the session, Pooja, and all yours.
Thank you so much, Shikha, and a very good evening to all of you. Really delighted to be here and speaking with all of you. This is really an opportunity to share and learn from each other. I'm sure I'm speaking to veterans all around the country. So, yeah, I think the key will be to keep the sessions extremely interactive. Feel free to interrupt while we've put some basic slides as a reference document, but feel free to interrupt if you have a question or a point of view. It's important that we leverage the next 30 odd minutes to the fullest. So yeah, and looking forward to our discussion. So I'll be sharing my perspective around how I see this topic. Shikha, you want to put it as a slideshow, or Chandana, whoever is presenting? When I was sort of contemplating about this subject, one thing that that made me do this investment of time is to ensure that we all understand why resilient leadership is a lot more prevalent in the times to come. Because if you see all around you, the macroeconomic environment is changing very, very rapidly and evolving, be it geopolitical situations, be it the economic at large, being the labor law, the regulatory framework, it's constantly evolving, and more or less the technology as well alongside. Which means, when, there was a time when change was more episodic, it became constant, and now it's really become pervasive. And I was reading this very interesting insights from Gartner, which said that in 2016, in a given year, you had about 6 change initiatives. And there was huge appetite for employees to go over the change, adopt it, and the change cycle were much shorter. In 2022, the change initiatives from 6 became 12. So it's doubled. And, the employees' ability to adapt to change reduced from 74% to 38%, which basically means deficit. And the one way to bridge the deficit, which is the emotional capacity, is through resilient leadership. And hence, this topic becomes extremely paramount for all of us. If you really, and this is applicable in our personal front, in our professional fronts, all walks of life, essentially. And so what is resilient leadership really? To me, it's simply put, leadership is no longer just about strategy or direction or implementation. It is about cultivating an ocean of emotional strengths, in which we could keep drawing from, time to time, and especially in the time of crisis. And we'll talk a bit more about it in the coming slides. So yeah, feel free to sort of move the slides, please. These two images really resonated with me in the context of resilient leadership. And they both display resilience in a very different shape and form, but essentially saying the same thing. So, I was talking about the emotional strength briefly. So, if I have to just draw a basic analogy, to make this topic a bit more simpler, well, there are a lot of these jargons, etc., available, in our common knowledge. This is about emotional capacity. What is emotional capacity? It basically encompasses the depth, the endurance, and the flexibility of one's emotional self. So if you look at the tree on your left-hand side, you would see the roots of the tree, and, the branches, they're all holding together in adverse time, and it's constantly changing. The weather around them is constantly changing, but they stand strong, and that defines their character. And they're not only standing strong, but also, helping societies, and people who are sort of, coming around the tree to give them shadow, shelter, all of those things happen. On the right hand side, again, it's a typical summit, that one is trying to do. And I'm sure you're very familiar, the needed strength, the emotional strength that's needed to do a summit on the Mount Everest. So, and they all boil down to emotional capacity, and it is very different than emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is more about immediate emotional navigation, while an emotional capacity is more about endurance and sustaining in the change of adversity. And maybe we can talk a bit more about the concepts in the next slide. But these two images to me resonates resilience. Typically, basic pillars of resilience. We all are resilient in our own ways, right? But being resilient in prolonged state of flux and change is what defines the character of a leader these days. And it's about our ability to continue to deal with that pressure and make the right decision, because it has far-reaching impact to the society, to the organization, to the employees at large that you're directing. Of course, we're all very familiar with emotional intelligence as coaches and practitioners, and that's extremely important to continue to stay self-aware of our own reactions, to things around us, and ability to adapt to it quite rapidly is again one thing that I think we have no option is to not be adaptable. And the longer we take to adapt, I think we're sort of distancing ourselves from the goal and our aspiration, whatever that might be on the personal front or on the professional front. these three will be key from a characteristic standpoint. There are many more, and we can talk about it if there are points of view or there are questions subsequently. So I just have one last page, and then we can see how you want to use the next time, 20 odd minutes. This is something that I thought was pretty relevant for all of us, because we keep so resilience is known to all of us, right? Like I was mentioning earlier, but these are some of the practices that helps us strengthen our resilience in many ways. And it really boils down to about our personal care. And when I say our personal care, it will include things like our mental fitness, our physical fitness. There is a very interesting piece on reappraisals, which basically, it says that a lot of our reactions comes with our assumptions. And it's very important to challenge these assumptions from time to time. And especially in the times of change, our assumptions are constantly evolving. There is a statistics to say that, as a neuroscience research says that, typically human brain is wired to have negative biases. And that's where emotional savoring becomes a lot more important, which is nothing but, constantly prolonging our positive, emotions, because that helps us sustain change, lead through adversity, and, continue to make those decisions that are needed, in times to come. So these broadly, I'm sure we all sort of familiar with this framework more or less. But these are some of the practices I think that comes very handy to me, as an individual, and I thought it could be worth sharing with all of you as well. So yeah, those were some basic introduction to the topic from my side. Yes, maybe we can take off the slides if that's all right, and maybe we'll be able to see each other much better.
Yeah, I think Abhijat has a question. Abhijat, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Shikha. So, Pooja, I have a question, and probably this may require a long answer. So, whatever we are talking about resilient leadership, we are talking mainly from an individual perspective, individual factor. How much of a resilient factor leadership is a factor of organizational factors?
It's intertwined in the context of an organization. Abhijit, it is intertwined. There was an interesting piece that at least we were discussing with some of our colleagues from my earlier organizations, and how do you build resilience in an organization, to the same point that you're mentioning, and how distinct that is and interlinked with creating a resilient leadership. It essentially boils down to 3, 4 areas. One is, to really have strategic planning. The second is cultural development, and the third is more the operational practices. And in strategic planning, it is just revisiting your purpose and values, which basically helps to sort of navigate how the decisions are made and actions are taken. And at the same time, the cultural development pieces would include how do you foster a culture that encourages creativity, adaptability, growth mindset. Some of those are extremely critical, and that will have a sort of a cascade down to also building resilient leadership, because the culture is not detached from leader, and vice versa. It's together it builds an organization. If that's helpful, Abhijit.
Yeah, to an extent. Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. Sridhar, you can, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Shikha? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Thank you, Pooja. You have started really well. I was telling the host that we are looking forward to. It resonates closely to, shall we say, VUCA situation, where the situation is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Can we equate that to this number one? Is my question or observation. Second is, you said this emotional capacity is slightly different from emotional intelligence, but presently I saw that in your earlier slide where emotional intelligence is being there. I also totally agree. One needs to have the emotional intelligence, then you can build on your emotional capacity. Is it not? These are my two maybe questions or observations. Thank you.
Sure, Sridhar. I think VUCA world, because of the VUCA world, this becomes a lot more relevant. So I totally agree that that's where, from a context standpoint, this is becoming a lot more prominent. People are talking a lot more about it because the change is constant. In fact, even when we're hiring, for senior leaders in the organization, this is one key criteria that we're starting to look at across industries and not isolated to the organization where I today work in. So, and this will only expand. There are, in fact, assessments that are coming up which sort of allows us to measure resilience in many shapes and form, because that is the only way for us to, stay ahead and maybe in line with the change and stay relevant from a competitiveness standpoint. The second, you were talking about the emotional intelligence and capacity, absolutely right. Fundamentally, so emotional capacity is of the three pillars that you saw in the characteristics. So it includes the decision-making, adaptability, and EQ. And if you did not have an EQ, maybe you can never get to building your emotional capacity. So they're absolutely, it's an extension and a deeper connect with
Well
those three
put.
pillars.
Well put. Thank you. Well put. Yeah,
Good observation. Thank you.
thank you. Well put.
Anybody else has any questions, any queries? You can either come up off mute and ask it, or you can also drop your questions in the chat. We want to keep it interactive so that we all can gain from each other's experience. So Pooja, while others ask the question, I have one question too. So we talk about resilient leadership, and as a leader, yeah, right? While you might be, thinking or equipping yourself with respect to the changing scenario and working on yourself as a leader, right? How do you drive your team along with you? Because it's not just about you or yourself or the way you work, right? You have to ensure that everybody in your team are actually understanding and adapting to the changes that are needed, right? So how do you efficiently drive the team without them really feeling of, okay, what is going on? And why do we keep changing the way we deal with things?
No, sure. That's an interesting question. So I'll talk about a few principles that I have used in my career and that's helped. So the first one being, communication becomes extremely critical on purpose and why we are changing in the first place and what does it mean for them. So the golden circle, I'm a huge fan of the golden circle, the why, the what, and the how. And just keeping each other honest through the process, that's one that I have done and I do all the time. The second is co-creating the plan with the teams, because unless they are part of the planning, and because they understand the impact much deeper, much more than somebody at a slightly different level may understand. So I have found huge benefit in co-creating the change plans, letting them sort of go over the motions. And there's always going to be norming, storming that will happen. But this entire co-creation of plan reduces that cycle dramatically. So that's the second thing that's really, really helped. The third is, I try to role model this one as growth mindset. Extremely critical, and especially, critical at all points in time, all the more I think inevitable during the times of changes, this growth mindset. So how do you help the team see the world of possibilities, right? How do you help them, try different things and give them a safety net and demonstrate that it's all right to fail and, to constantly sort of keep learning, keep adapting. And, if you're not doing that, you certainly can't sustain, this era, because like I was saying earlier, right? Change is pervasive. It's just going to be there all around you. The only thing that will set us apart will be the growth mindset. So those are the three areas that personally has helped me immensely. That helps us keep each other honest, keep each other on track. And then we're very quick to sort of, adapt and change course if needed. So it's not like hard bound, and, agility is extremely critical. If I have to stack rank, I'll put that the topmost during the periods of change.
So thank you so much, Pooja. It was, I think truly enlightening what you said. I really like the growth mindset part, which is where you're really driving people towards this is the way to actually move to next level and sort of drive them along with you. We have one question in the chat from Shweta. She says, I would like to know about your career journey and at what stage of your career you might have felt the need for this resilient leadership. And I'm sure eventually what helped you to master it.
Sure. In fact, I've had a very non-conventional career journey, if I may say so. And, earlier I didn't even know that resilient is something that I was intrinsically, sort of imbibing, when I was sort of in my own career journey, I was growing up the ranks, so very non-conventional. Typically, so I'm from the HR fraternity. You typically, so there's a conventional feeling that you start out with talent acquisition, then you do some sort of a COE role, and then you get to the HR business partner, which is supposed to be pegged at the highest pecking order alongside comp and ben. But I started my career as an HR business partner, and we were in the middle of huge change. At those times in Standard Chartered Bank, we were wanting to very quickly sort of build our lending business and the footprint, and that meant hiring large numbers. And in a multinational, to hire large numbers is never easy because there's a lot of compliances that come along the way. And I remember my boss asking me, could you take up this role? And I'm like, am I not performing well? He said, no, that's completely reverse. Because you're doing well, we thought you could make a good TA person. And I just took it. And, I just, and I really excelled in that very quickly. From a small team, I became a regional head where I was heading South Asia and a few other markets in a period of 2 years, 3 years. And that just meant, I, of course, didn't know about resilient leadership to the extent that I'm able to appreciate it now, but it just meant that things kept coming back to me and my team. Businesses didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was happening because something we were all going through together, the whole huge growth journey. And a lot of these complexities come with the growth journey. You're constantly adjusting to the cycle, to the market needs, to the talent needs, etc. And we did beautifully well. And there was huge accolades, in the country, in the region, in the global, team. So that was an early brush on the resilient leadership, if I may say so. And then there came in a point where I did feel that, look, you sometimes want to test your waters, and so I have always this need of looking for my next role. Once I have got my aspirational role, so I got my regional head, and that's something that I really wanted to do then. And I'm like, what next? Okay, is this getting too comfortable for me? Because I knew even if I, was not in office, I still will deliver to the needed levels, etc. And wasn't very comfortable because I was not on the edge. I didn't feel I would learn a lot that I needed to. So I diversified, moved to a very different industry. I'm sure you're familiar with ITeS. It is a very different scale. I was heading HR for over 20,000 employees globally. I've never managed that scale. And the only thing that helped was being at it, right? As a business HR leader, for me, it was very important to understand business. Only then you could be a good HR professional. And the complete balance sheet, the levers, the drivers of business shifted to ITeS, and that meant constant learning, relearning, testing the markets, testing yourselves, putting in yourself in positions where you don't know enough. And what's really helped me is just being honest. I never claimed I knew it all, and I still don't claim I know it all. And I think that's how I sort of constantly learn. And then I said, all right, WNS done enough, and CRISIL happened. I really wanted to be a CHRO, and I felt this could be a place where I would want to explore that. And thankfully, I didn't join as a CHRO, but I got elevated to a CHRO in an 18 months journey within CRISIL. So I know to look back, some of, two things really had: growth mindset, resilient leadership. And I think I invariably practiced it in different ways. So yeah, if that helps.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Conscious, yeah, it just happened.
I hope it answered your question, Shweta. If not, you can come off mute and contribute to this. I saw Maria's hand up. I also see Nariman's hand up. So yeah, you can go in sequence.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pooja, for the insights that you provided. and really have a lot of takeaways from whatever you said. And my question to you would be, how do we, as so many of us are corporate trainers, so what do you think is our role in creating resilient leadership? What could you say to that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, actually, I'm not a big fan of classroom training unless they put me through experiential training. So as corporate trainers, we need to really evolve the way we train people, and that's why I'm not a big fan of theory myself. Like I find it very difficult to go verbose. And I was telling Shikha, when you're preparing for this session, don't get me to do slides because it just becomes really verbose. This topic which is known by all, so it's not a new thing at all. And same thing. So whenever I'm engaging with any academies, etc., I make sure that it's all about case studies, experiences, and you just get participants to experience it. And I think the learning there is immense. The appreciation there is immense. So, if as a corporate trainer, I'm sure you already imbibe that in your training design. But I think we have to completely move on from theory. I remember doing a session with one of the partners with my leaders, and we didn't use any slide at all, nothing at all. And that was the most impactful session in my 20 years I have seen. Most impactful because we were just thrown into very challenging situation and we were all struggling. And I think we ended up creating stronger bonds, stronger appreciation of the subject. So yes, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pooja.
Thank you, Maria. Nariman, over to you.
Thank you, Shikha. Couldn't agree more with Maria, Pooja, when she says extremely insightful discussion and a lot to learn from that. Thank you, Pooja. My question to you is that how can leaders assess and improve their resilience in real time, especially during times of high stress? And are there any tools and techniques that can assist in this immediate evaluation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Extremely relevant on this topic. So, a few things that at least we try and do. There's a saying, right? The two character becomes more prominent in times of stress. And hence, it's extremely important, to practice self-reflection to the extent one is able to on a very regular basis. So practicing mindfulness helps. So in a stressful situation, you still will do what you usually do, but if you're self-aware and you've created a strong support system, which is I usually do. So I always have created a strong support system. So I have checks and balances both at home and at work. People that really sort of help keep me honest and on track. And you just say, look, am I overreacting? Am I doing this? And yes, you're absolutely like, shit, I don't like this. But then you have a bit, because you're self-aware and you're complementing that with what you're hearing from people that you trust, is the only simple thing that helps. Everything else could be on the paper, but those two things I find it most practical. And at least I imbibe that quite regularly for myself.
Thank you. Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you, Nariman. Shaheen has a question. She's asking if there is a homegrown leader who hasn't really been through a formal training, how would they be groomed to be more resilient?
It's a very interesting thing, and I do have a very controversial theory around this, so please take it with a pinch of salt. After a point in time in my life, I feel we become very hardwired. We are who we are, so we can never change our intrinsic selves. And if I'm in general not very agile or adaptable, you can never get somebody to be more agile, more adaptable, resilient. I don't think that's possible to the level one would need, because I'm a big believer on strengths, playing on people's strengths. However, if you have a situation and you have a colleague and you need to work on a colleague, I think it's first very important that the colleague understands that there is a need to reflect, that there is a need to change. And if they don't feel there is a need to change, don't waste your time. If they believe that, yes, there is merit in changing, then there are these very structured programs that are available. Please ensure, there's a mixed bag of, equipments that you give them. When I say equipment, it's about coaching, it's about some classroom facilitation, it's about some online learning. and some support system basically you create for that person to constantly learn. But there's going to be no magic wand. This is the most difficult one to crack, for sure. But please assess and understand whether the person is really wanting to change and sees the need to change before you invest time.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. Shaheen, I hope it answers your question. Otherwise, you can add to the conversation if you wish to.
And I think
Maria,
it
you
would be
can.
good to hear from everybody as well. If you're
Yeah.
on a point of view or on an experience, I think it would be really good to really, share, because it's about sharing and learning together.
Sure.
Yes, sorry, Shikha, yes.
No, I was just saying, Maria, I think you can just come off mute and ask your question.
Okay, yeah. So just one question. I'm just curious to know, like, who do you look up to as a role model? I've also put that question in the chat box. I'm really curious to know that, Pooja.
I actually do not have one person, honestly, as a role model. I have different people depending on the situation. Intrinsically, I will go back and reflect on how and what they would have done in a given situation. So not a single person. Yeah, that's how I am, I guess. Because again, I think it probably goes back to my bit on playing on people's strengths. So I do have my mentors, etc., that I absolutely keep in touch and keep drawing from their experiences, etc. But depending on the situation, I might have a different persona that I'm able to relate to. And it could also be my team member. So there's a team member of mine who's absolutely composed, and I find it very difficult, to say, okay, how do you maintain the composure? And that's something that I will remind myself. All right, composure is possible. So if she can do it, I can also try. So yeah, it will change.
Thank you.
Sridhar, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just trying to ask Pooja. Just now, the previous question, take it beyond. The question asked her, who are your role models or who people inspire you? And she said there are multiple. I thought that initially when you said, no, there are 2, 3 points and golden circle, then I was about, curiously listening. You would spell the name. Golden circle, start with why. Why do we do what do we do? Would you like to? I'm a huge fan of his anyway, like you. Would you like to?
Yeah, I'm sure we all understand golden circle, but I'm happy to elaborate, Mr. Sridhar. So, we very often underplay the why, and every change.
Ek minute. I thought I wanted you to tell the name Simon Sinek. Then you.
Acha, okay. But okay, he's not my inspiration, but of course.
Oh. Okay. It opens up another area. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm a huge fan of his work and some of the theory and concepts that is come with, and I really like he comes up with his thought-provoking, theories and analogies which are very insightful. So yeah, the golden circle, right? The classic, the why, the what, and the how. If we are able to crack the code and why we do what we do, I think we've basically managed change to a great extent, and we don't spend enough time that it deserves. So, if I'm not giving increment, in a given year, why are we not giving increment? It's very important to be honest and transparent, and very important to treat adults like adults and just share what you know. The second is what, right? Every change has an intended outcome, and that sort of is what are you trying to achieve with this change? Be very specific on what, because eventually everybody is going to challenge if you don't achieve the outcome. But if you achieve the outcome, then the cycle becomes a bit more easy and palatable. And then how? I mean, so you have the why the change is happening, what the change will bring about, but how are you going to sort of factor the change, like what processes are going to change, how is the whole team going to rally around this change, what's going to change in our lives, etc. So the how the change will materialize will be extremely critical. So that's the golden circle. That at least I try to imbibe wherever I am able.
But did I hear correctly that he is not your inspiration? Did you say in the beginning that you are not a huge fan of his? I mean, more on
No,
that side.
I said it's not a role model for me. The earlier
Okay,
question was who's a role model. So I said,
It
no,
was
I'm a
the earlier
huge
question
fan
was
of
about
his
role model.
work. Otherwise, I
Earlier
would
question was,
quote his work.
I know. Earlier question was on role modeling. Right. But thanks for explaining Golden Circle again, because we want to hear once again. Nothing like that. Thank you. Golden
I
Circle.
think, Mr. Sridhar, you should just share with the team. Looks like you have great insights. I'm sure we all benefit from your insights.
No. You have done it. I have no illusion that I can do better than you, but I wanted you to explain Golden Circle. That is my humble contribution here. My contribution ends here, honestly speaking. I cannot articulate better than you, honestly. Let me be modest. But thanks for explaining Golden Circle. I wanted to do that. Thank you. Anyway, I'll keep interacting or interrupting, whatever you want to call it. I'll keep. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you. We have a question from Adir. He asks, what do you read to upgrade and update yourself in the role? Any authors?
Sorry, I missed that. Hi, Adir. It's good to see you. We've met earlier, so I'm not sure if he remembers me. I do remember him.
So he wants to know, what do you read to upgrade and update yourself in the role, and any authors if you have for recommendation.
So one thing I'm really bad at is reading. I don't read for a given topic. I will read when I want to read, and it could be anything and everything under the sun. So yeah, I think I'm a very bad example of giving you any inspiration, if at all, in terms of authors that I follow and books or etc. that I read. It's really need based and what I want to read on a given day. So whatever. So for example, so we were doing some work around culture, and at that point, I would read anything and everything to do with culture at that point in time. If we are sort of going through an exercise on, what's the best performance management practice that the industry could have. So I would read anything and everything to do with, say, performance management at a given point in time. So it could change from time to time, topics to topics, and not a very specific area that I really follow. But abreast, I would read all the news and updates quite regularly. So I have like subscriptions of different bodies like Harvard and Gartner and those type of articles, but they're more general management and the specific thematic topics that I would follow.
Sure. Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. Okay, Nariman has a couple of favorite resilient leaders. Nariman, you want to elaborate on that?
No. Everybody was talking about inspiration and stuff. So I said, chalo, let me also voice my people I look up to. I just put it out there. No particular reason. I find Winston Churchill, very resilient. Odds, and they were about to lose the battle, and everything in the world was against them. He was adaptable, he was quick on his feet, and same thing with Mahatma Gandhi. So I felt, and these two people could be good examples of resilient leaders. So I just put it out there.
Sure. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing that might just, I don't know if sort of is helpful, but at least something that I do quite regularly. So given that I'm intrinsically drawn towards identifying strengths and working through strengths, I will be drawn to anybody that displays a certain strength. So for example, I was visiting Kashmir a few months ago, and it reminded me of Article 370, and it reminded me of, Prime Minister. And to me, that was a great example of resilient leadership, because when you are there on the field, you just realize that there are segments of people who are really benefiting from abolishment of the Article 370. So that could become a very topical, point that I will remember and, feel inspired.
Maria, you had something to add?
I had a question while Pooja was narrating her story. One question was there. It's a bit off the topic, but is it okay, Pooja, if I ask that?
Yeah, absolutely. If I have the response, I'll absolutely respond.
So yeah, now that we are all talking about, motivation and intrinsic motivation and all. So my question is, like, is there any quote that you live by, or any belief that you live by? What is, if I'm sure all of us have certain values, beliefs. So what are the beliefs that you live by?
I'm going to
Uh,
say
what-
something that might sound really cliche, but I truly sort of embody it in many ways. So there was a football coach who would come up with a concept called of irrational optimism. And it means that, nobody in the world is able to achieve what they have when you don't have the means, if you did not have irrational optimism. And I truly believe in the world of possibilities, and my strengths profile also sort of displays that. So I will have my positivity, restorative, and we basically say that I will be at it until I have found a solution to a problem. So that's the belief that I have, that anything and everything under the sun one can achieve if you've applied yourselves. So don't bother. You may not get it right the first time, but if you've stopped, you anyways failed. So no harm trying.
Nice. I'll try to imbibe that. I'm already working on it. Yeah, but I will try to imbibe it more. Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you.
Pleasure, Maria.
Sridhar, yes.
Yeah. Once again, coming back.
He's going to
Pooja,
rant.
yes,
I think he's got a specific duty today.
you know something. You know something. I got to come out of open. Last week, I made a present. It will be useful to my colleagues also here. Last week, I made a presentation to Mirror to be part of their panel. 20, 25, 30 minutes. Major
Okay.
feedback given to me was, in a 30-minute presentation, I could not engage my audience enough. You get me? So I was keenly watching, how are you going to engage some? Today I thought there would be some more than 100, now 70 or 80. How are you going to engage? Let me learn. I think now I know the trick today. And the roles are reversed. I am participating with vengeance, actually. The roles are reversed. I'm sure it is going to be beneficial to the program. Anyway, having said that, thank you, Pooja. Having said that, you said that you will always have people who will inspire you within your industry, naturally. And you cited an example, political example. Of course, we'll have people from politics, from business. Now we are having a lot of analogies, examples, people who can inspire from sporting arena. What do you think the role of sports person per se who can inspire corporates like Manu Bakar or somebody? Can you please elaborate the role? Will you be really inspired? Politics, yes. Business, anyway, because they are your guiding light, your seniors. What about sports personalities? How do they inspire you? Will they? How? Then?
Yeah, I think they surely embody resilience, right? Because they're absolutely performing at all points in time under stress, and they're very consistent, and they won't waver at all. And the recent Olympics that we had, there's so many names. I'm sure it's popping up in all our minds, but um, kudos to them. And one thing that as a child I never did was I was never into athletes, and I do feel that probably I should have explored at an early stage in my life. But I grew up in a joint family that taught me resilience any which ways as a child. But no, very huge inspiration from sports personalities all over
Pressure to perform.
and all fields of sports.
Yeah. Pressure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sridhar. Akshita, you have something to contribute?
Yes. Is it okay if I don't come on camera? Because I'll just try and come. Is this okay? Yeah. What I'd like to contribute is we all are leaders in our own lives. I would say I'm the hero of my life, and so are all the others. And true leadership is, like that, those Russian dolls, one doll within the other. So a leader who can inspire another person to be a leader who in turn can inspire another person is, I think, is true leadership. And there's a little bit more that I like to add on types of leaders. So there are some type of leaders who are the learners, like, they learn everything and anything. They learn, they reflect, they apply. Then there's the other type who are very experimental. They try out everything and anything. Or they may hire new people to, bring in new things and they want to try it out. The third types are the ones who disrupt everything. I think we could say Ambani, who's disrupted the entire telecom industry and everything with his Kallo Duniya Mutti Mein. So those type of leaders. And the fourth type, there are about 3 or 4 different types of leaders who usually are able to achieve success because of what they do and why they do. So I do not know. What would you say about that? And I'd like to know, what do you think about it?
No, I think it is an interesting take on leadership. This subject is really deep and wide. And if you ask my view, I think to me leadership is about agility, adaptability, and somebody who can very seamlessly change their style, intrinsic styles as and when needed. I think that will help the organization teams they themselves in many ways.
True. Yeah, because it's all about change, how adaptive. They say that now we have the EQ, which was the emotional quotient. There's a new thing that's come up, which is the adaptability quotient. And adaptability is what sets you apart from the others. The sooner you're able to adapt, the better for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Akshita. Yeah, while this is being discussed, there's one thing that came up for me, Pooja, and and anybody else who wants to bring into it. While we talk about resilience and adaptability and change, right? As a leader, sometimes you are, asking yourself that question: that is it changing too often, right? So, am I here to change and adapt, or do I hold my ground into the conviction of yes, this is what is right, right? How do you make that distinction of no, it's not just about adapting to whatever is coming up, right? Should I be holding my ground here and being with what I believe in? What is your say on it?
Wow, that's quite a question. There is no right or wrong, and um, there are times, so I'm a big believer of taking team along, like co-creating, change, and I don't look for consensus, but I absolutely want teams, the business teams, the HR teams, to sort of believe in the plan, and so that we're able to logically sort of implement, and it has the right business impact. And there are times when I have a firm conviction that this needs to be done in a certain way, and I'll hold my ground. And there's always this fear, because I know people, they have a diverse view, but they're kind enough to say, okay, if you so believe it, let's just try it out. And they'll be the first one to say, look, I told you so. But that doesn't sort of bother me as an individual. It hasn't bothered me at all, because I've always been quite upfront about situations, and I will put it out there. Look, I know there's limited conviction in the group, but I do feel that there is benefit. Let's try. We might fail, but we will at least learn, and we know what not to do in the future. So I do that when I really want to change things in a manner that I think I know it all, which is a dangerous situation to be in. So I don't really do that very often, but I've done that a few times. And one or two times I have failed as well, and I have been great. I have acknowledged it very graciously that, look, I think you were right, and I shouldn't have explored this. And people have been extremely supportive and still sponsor the whole intervention.
Right.
So
Thank you so much.
how do you sort of recover from adversity and still keep going in your sort of going further in your journey is very key.
Yeah, sort of like taking a calculated risk of what do you have to lose there, maybe deciding.
Yeah. So I do have a very strong governance mechanism whenever I'm trying something new. So things, whatever that you think are not in a manner you would like, you constantly are able to course correct. And there are people who you probably draw from their perspective, experiences, and that helps.
Okay. Thank you. Ambika has one question. She's unable to start the audio. The more resilient we are, the less likely we are to be knocked down by a stressor. So she's asking, but during a setback, are there some golden rules on how we can still put our best foot forward?
Yeah, I could imagine you come up with this question, Ambika. So I'll at least tell you what I follow, and I'm not sure if that probably will resonate with most on the call but it's very important during the setback, you sort of just take a moment to reflect. Not react, because we're very tempted to react in a negative way during setbacks, and you sort of start throwing toys out of your pram and saying, oh, this is not working, and this is why is the life the way it is, etc. So important to reflect and isolate don't generalize, but isolate that situation, lean on to your support system. So, so I try not to react. I will work harder during times of stress and setbacks. And I've seen that, and it's really weird, but I do that. Maybe my time will become longer. I will start tracking outcomes a bit more closely. My husband comes in very handy as a support system, and so does my colleagues at work. And with time, I'm able to sort of quickly sort of see the reality and say what I could have done differently, or the situation could have been dealt in a different manner. And it's about, I was sort of sharing earlier in one of the slides, it's about challenging your assumptions, and savoring emotional sort of strength. Some of those sort of kicks in parallel, and that just helps. So failures don't bother me as an individual, never. I'll just acknowledge, move on, and I know what not to do.
Sure. That is great. And yeah, Nariman wants to add to it, reflect and respond instead of reacting. Yeah, makes total sense. You take a pause, maybe understand what is happening, and then go ahead with it. Rajat has one question. Rajat Shubra, how you manage conflict if it happens in your leadership team without impacting your core values?
Without impacting your
core values.
Oh, well. Oh, this conflict is part and parcel, I think, of our life. So, in a situation of conflict, it depends on what, because conflict helps you get the best outcome in most situations. So it's not a bad thing, from the way I look at it. And it's important to just call spade a spade in a situation of conflict and just move on. So, there was one little trick that we'd agreed in the leadership meeting, that in a situation of conflict and things are not going in a manner we would want, we will say that let's call the elephant in the room and we'll state the facts. And that's really helped, because that's a cue, guys. Let's just grow up. There's a situation at hand. Let's look at it in a certain way and resolve it. So, yeah, that's something that we do. So different teams, different tricks, but more or less being honest and transparent about it at that point helps.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else has any questions, any thoughts, any experiences that you want to share? No, I think we are.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, Nariman. Yes.
Hi, Pooja, once again. What are your personal values and beliefs, Pooja, that shape your approach to foster or inculcate the resilience in leadership amongst your team members?
So, first, foremost, respect, extremely critical. One needs to respect each other's points of view. Ability to see good in different situations is extremely critical. The second is trust. Building that trust, with the ecosystem, that you work with, because we do have wide ecosystem, right? Different types of stakeholders, teams, etc. So that's the second thing. And third, very critical will be the entire bit on ethics and integrity.
Yeah.
Whatever may come in, whatever situation, there is, but organization is always going to be the paramount. Stay true to its ethics and values and demonstrate that day on day. So those are the three broad personal values, and that's something that all of us sort of abide by, more or less, I would say.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Pooja, you have anything else to add? I think, yeah, people are done with the questions or the queries that they have.
No, sure. So I'll just close with this one statement to say change is pervasive. The longer the change cycle, the pain is going to be longer for each of us. It prolongs the change cycle, the change cycle. It's important to really take out the time and really see what it means for you. There's always a silver lining there. Trust me, always. Find that silver lining. It becomes a lot more easier to stay resilient and keep building from there on.
So, thank you so much for the insightful session, Pooja, and thank you everyone for being so participative and adding to the session with lots of queries and your own insight. Had a wonderful time learning a lot on resilience, and not just resilience, actually, a lot to do with how you can be a good leader and contribute not towards the organization, actually towards your teams also. So thank you very much. Yes, Sridhar,
Thank you
you want
for
to add?
having me. Yeah.
Mainly to join with you and thank her on one point which struck me really. That's why I
Sure.
typed staying vulnerable. When she said, no, in my team meetings, yes, it is possible. There could be different viewpoints, but still I would try to push across my point and say, then why don't we do that? Let us see whatever happens. Either I succeed or I learn. That's what she was trying to say, probably. Either I succeed or I learn. And she was very graceful enough to admit, which I liked, that there were on a few occasions where I was found to be wrong. But immediately I acknowledged and apologized. That's why I typed staying vulnerable. I think that is of Pooja. I think that is a great quality of a leader as we have seen it. But thanks for the excellent session. Brilliant. Thanks, Mirak, for organizing this session. I'm through. Finally, I'm through.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you, everyone.
Wishing
And
everybody
yeah,
a great evening. Yes.
sure. Thank you so much, Pooja, and thank you everyone for sparing this hour. We hope we added great value to you. We'll send you the feedback form. We look forward to your, feedback, addition, whatever way we can improve, and keep seeing you here every month. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
everyone. Thank you,
everyone.
Pooja. Bye.